Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 3702B, and today's date is August 5th, 2025, and the title of the episode is Epstein Narrative Just Trapped the Deep State. Movie 1, Russia Hoax. Movie 2, coming this fall, Timing. Let's talk about our health. A recent clinical trial found that participants using just 10 grams of collagen a day for 8 weeks saw up to 20% increase in skin hydration and a 17% improvement in elasticity while visibly reducing their wrinkle depth. If you're aiming to boost skin health, collagen is a must-have. But typical collagen supplements found on store shelves don't always do the job. This is why I use this special blend of magic, and I'm obsessed with how much my skin health has improved. It improves my skin with the 5 types of premium collagen it needs to help reduce wrinkles. Since taking it, I've seen smoother skin, more elasticity, fewer lines, and more youthful glow. Plus, it mixes smoothly with my morning coffee or tea. Make sure to grab a bag while it's still 51% off, only at healthwithx22.com. Plus, you'll also get free VIP live and health fitness coaching for life, a free ebook titled The 14 Foods for Amazing Skin, a 60-day satisfaction guarantee, and free shipping with your order. Once again, that website is healthwithx22.com, or just click the link in the description. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, big tech fake news, the puppet masters, you can see they are now trapped in their own narrative. And think about what they've been trying to do. They knew that the Russian collusion evidence was going to be coming out. They tried to create the idea that Trump didn't want to release the Epstein files. They were hoping that this would be an incredible distraction. But you can see that Trump played them once again. And now the deep state players are going to be trapped in their own narrative. And think about it. Clinton, that's Bill and Hillary, they're going to be subpoenaed. Attorney General Merrick Garland, Comey, William Barr, Jeff Sessions, Robert Mueller, Loretta Lynch, Eric Holder. They're going to be asked questions about pretty much everything. And you could see that they're going to either have to answer questions about Epstein, Russian collusion. Now, if they plead the fifth, I think people are going to realize that, hey, wait a minute, these people are guilty. And if they truly had information on Trump, they would reveal it. Now, of course, these people are going to keep the grand conspiracy going because that's all they have. And you could see that Trump now has turned the entire narrative around. What they tried to do didn't work, and actually it has now trapped them. And everything is going to be pointing to them in the end, which is going to be very, very interesting. And the subpoenas are a no-win situation for the deep state players. If they talk, well, they're going to incriminate themselves. If they plead the fifth, it shows that, hey, look, they really don't have dirt on Trump. Remember, they told us all these things were in the files. And this was a very, very smart move. So when you really look at this, you can see the deep state players, they are now in trouble. They're panicking. And let's see how many people don't show up for the subpoena. Remember the last time Hillary Clinton was subpoenaed, she tried everything she possibly could, and finally she was able to get out of it. This time around, I don't think it's going to be the same way. And remember, if they decide not to show up, guess what? They go directly to jail. Didn't that happen to Steve Bannon? Didn't that happen to Navarro? So I do believe the same thing is going to happen to them now. The shoe is on the other foot. And we could see that Trump now and everyone on his team, they are now all on the offensive, and the deep state players are now on the defensive. Everything has changed. And what we're seeing right now is the first movie, the Russian collusion hoax. And yes, a grand jury is now being impaneled. It sounds like the grand jury it's going to happen in Florida. And remember, the grand jury, it's a secretive process. Really, nobody knows what is going on. They don't really leak the information. Of course, if it's the deep state players, they're going to leak it, but this is not going to be leaked. And you have to also remember is that the grand jury can take up to 18 months. Now, it could take a little bit shorter, but think about the timing of all this. Let's see. Trump and team, they said, okay, this is the perfect time to release the declassification of the Russian collusion hoax. Let's get the fake news. Let's get Brennan Clapper, Comey. Let's get Obama, Hillary Clinton. Let's get them all denying all of this and let them continually say that, no, there is Russian collusion. Let them continue the grand conspiracy. The fake news is continuing the grand conspiracy. This way, we don't have to worry about the statute of limitations. So they fell right into that trap. Now, we could see that the DOJ is impaneling a grand jury, which is going to take up to about 18 months. Yeah, could it go longer? Yeah, most likely, but I don't think it will. Think about the timing of all this. So now, from now until the midterms or a little bit after the midterms, this is when we're going to get the results. Are they going to prosecute? Is there enough evidence to go after these people? So while this is simmering and cooking, I do believe we're going to get more information. Remember, we have the FBI, we have the DOJ. What are they looking into? They're looking into the rigging of the 2020 election and the 2024 election, and probably the 2016 election, which means this is all going to go with the Russian collusion information. So I do believe this fall we're going to start to hear information come out, which is going to be declassified, and we're going to start to learn about how they actually rigged the election system. And think about it. We have the grand jury looking at all the evidence. We have now the second movie, which I do believe is coming, and you could see how the perfect storm is now all coming together. Now, I do believe the next part of this is probably going to be Epstein, because remember, most of these people are blackmail. Most of these people are involved in human trafficking, child trafficking. And I do believe eventually what we're going to learn is that, yes, it's the same exact people. Now, again, this doesn't happen overnight. So when you hear the grand jury, it's not going to happen in the next month, 2 months. So remove that expectation right now. Take the expectation and say, okay, after the midterms, this is when we're going to get the results. Now, it could come sooner. It could happen before the midterms, but I do believe that Trump has set this up and timed it perfectly. So this way, once we win the House, once we win the Senate, once he has all his people in place, we're at that point where then we can actually try these people. You need the right judges in place. You need the right prosecutors in place. You need to make sure that we're following the rule of law. So it's not going to happen right now, because once again, the grand jury is going to go through the evidence. Now, it might be completed before the midterms, but I do believe we're going to wait until after the midterms, until we get control and we're able to impeach a lot of these judges, and we're able to put the judges that we want in place. So I do believe Trump is now timing this correctly, and throughout the next 15 to 18 months, we're going to see movie after movie after movie. And think about it, after the midterms, we're going to see all the movies playing at the same exact time. I mean, think about the optics. Think about the timing. Think about the plan that Trump set up. It's going to be absolutely glorious when you really start to see all this come together. Now, we know that there's going to be a lot of people out there, because the grand jury takes time. They're going to say nothing is happening. Nothing is going the way. But again, justice doesn't happen with a snap of a finger. Justice takes time. And if we're going to do this right, if we're going to get these people, if we're going to throw them in jail, if we're going to prosecute all these individuals for being treasonous to this country, we must do it right. Why do you want to rush it? Enjoy the show. Watch these people. They're going to be feeling pain every step of the way. They're going to be pissed off. You're going to see the anger build, and you're going to see how they're so panicked over time, especially when they're starting to realize that the grand jury is coming back with information that is actually going to lead to their prosecutions. So I do believe that you're going to watch these people feel the pain every step of the way, and it's going to be pretty darn bad, because it's not just one case against them. It's going to be multiple cases against them. And just think about the timing. Think about the optics. Now, like we said before, the deep state players, and I go back to the time when Obama was speaking to Biden. And remember, we had the lip syncer where they looked at the lips and they said, okay, we have time. Don't worry about it. I do believe they're hoping that they can distract and they can have some type of, false flag or something before we ever get to trial. Now, do I believe that's going to work? No, they do believe it's going to work. They're planning on this. And remember, they don't do they don't do anything like, oh, let's plan it today and have it tomorrow. They've been planning this for a long time, just like they planned how to cheat in the 2020 election, just like they planned Russian collusion, just like they planned COVID. This didn't happen overnight. They planned this out way in advance, and they then sprung it on the people. So whatever false flag they're preparing right now, this has been planned a long time ago, and they're getting prepared and ready to spring it if they have the ability to do it. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but again, I go back to that time when Obama and Biden were speaking, and we had the people that read lips, and they said, listen, don't worry about it. We've got time. We got time. And the only thing that refers to is that, hey, we have time. We're planning everything. We're getting everything prepared. But again, you have to remember Trump and the Patriots, what they're doing right now is they're shutting off the funding to the deep state players, which is going to make it very, very difficult for the deep state. Now, did they already collect the funding for this? Have they already had the funding in place for this? Most likely, yes, if they're planning this out. So, yes, the funding is shut down now, but I do believe right before Trump won the election, what did Biden do during that period of time? He funneled a lot of money, and there's a reason for this. I do believe he funneled it to a lot of groups. I do believe that they used this money to plan the false flag, but we'll have to see how this all plays out. And again, Trump, the Patriots, they know this. They know that they're going to try to do something. They know that they're going to plan to stop everything that's happening. They're not just going to sit back and say, okay, we lost, that's it. I guess there's no hope here and we'll just be on our merry way. No, this is the deep state criminal syndicate. They're going to try to fight back. I think Trump and the Patriots want them to go down this path. I think they want them to fight back because this shows that they're guilty. This shows that they're trying to cover it up. And you think Trump and the Patriots can actually use this against them? Of course they can. And I do believe they will. Now, we're going to be talking a lot more about what's happening because you could see the deep state players, the Ds, they are now panicked. Remember, they're also, depending on the midterms, they're also preparing things to cheat or whatever they're trying to do. Trump is now countering everything that they're trying to do in the midterms because remember, the midterms are very, very important. When the Ds lose control over the seats in the House and the Senate, and the rhinos lose their seats in the House and the Senate, it's pretty much game over for them. So we're leading up to the midterms, and you can see this is why the Ds, this is why they're so panicked, especially out in Texas, where you could see the Ts, they decided to get on a private jet. They went to New York, they went to Illinois, and we could see that Abbott and Paxton, they now have issued arrest warrants. We could see some of the Ds, I think two of them, they broke ranks and they've come back to Texas. And I do believe the rest will probably come back because if they don't, they're arrested and they're replaced. And how's this going to help him in the end? They tried something. It failed, just like everything else they do. Now, the other thing that's really interesting, and this is why people might have a problem talking to maybe friends or family members, because it looks like there was a study that was done, and it shows, and the rabbit hole put this out, that Gen Z and millennial liberals are the most likely to sever ties with friends and family over political differences. Wokeness is a cult mentality. And when you look at this, you can see that boomers and Gen X, they're much more understanding compared to Gen Z and millennial, and boomers and Gen X, they'll actually have a conversation with you. And this pretty much explains why all of this was happening. Now, the other thing that we could see is that under Obama, under Biden, which is really Obama, they were bringing in all the illegals into this country. And this was their agenda, just like the agenda out in Europe. And they were bringing in people that are criminals, terrorists, human traffickers, child traffickers. And that here in the United States, they were using the birthright citizenship, which actually doesn't mean what they say it means. And basically what they were doing is they were having people come over and they would give birth here and they would say, oh, this person's a U.S. citizen. And again, if you're a U.S. citizen, your allegiance is to America first and whatever country you came from second. So whatever you do, especially if you're in a political office, your allegiance is to America. If it isn't, get out of the office. You shouldn't be there. And what's very interesting is that Democratic Representative Delia Ramirez at a summit in Mexico City this weekend tells the audience, while speaking in Spanish, I'm proud Guatemalan before I'm an American. And this is why we should never have birthright citizenship. Again, it's not to give people U.S. citizenship. It was actually meant for the slaves going back in time. IB responded to this and said, Delia Ramirez is the anchor baby of an illegal alien, is married to an illegal alien, and as a U.S. Congresswoman, lectures Americans about their obligation to people like her, identifying as a proud Guatemalan in her own words. So right there, her first allegiance is not to the United States. And most of these individuals that we see in these different positions in Congress, in state congresses, and other places, you could see that their allegiance is not to the United States and their allegiance is to another country, which means they really don't care about the Constitution. They really don't care about the rights of the people of this country. And they basically do not fall into what America really is. And I think this is becoming very, very clear to the people of this country. And this is why we have these individuals in there. And when you start to look at, especially the Ds, you could see they're wearing the Ukrainian pin. They're wearing pins of different countries. If you are representing the United States, you don't wear or fly a flag from a different country. You're here in America and you're for America. If you're not for America and you're for another nation and you're flying the flag of another nation and you're wearing a pin of another nation, go to that nation, get out of office, or we, the people, must remove these people. Now, again, most of these people are installed in these positions because, again, they use the rig system, and we're talking about the deep state players, where they actually allow these people to get into these positions. The people really don't want these people. Do you really think the people of California really want Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi? They're looking around their districts. They're saying, wow, this is great. I love the garbage. I love the tents. I love the poop on the ground. This is incredible. We should vote for them again because you know what? They're just going to do more of this. It's incredible. For the last 40 years, this is what we got. So you know what? We definitely want these people. Do you really think people are actually voting for these people? Absolutely not. They're installed into these positions. And this is why California, New York, and many other places, this is why they have these rigged systems, because this is how they maintain control. And you can see the Ds, they're very, very worried because once you implement voter ID, once you get rid of the illegals, once you get rid of the mail-in ballots, all these people, they're not going to be voted into these positions. And they know it. This is why they're so panicked. And think about what Trump has done already. He's deporting all the illegals, making it much more difficult for these deep state players to cheat, making it much more difficult for the Ds to cheat. He's putting up the border wall, which is making it very difficult for people to come into this country. He has the Border Patrol now patrolling the border. And since Trump came back into office, the border wall is going up very, very quickly. U.S. Customs and Border Protection has initiated more than 80 miles of new permanent border barrier projects across San Diego, Yuma, Tucson, El Paso, Rio Grande Valley sectors, with these projects currently in various stages of planning and construction. The CBP has deployed approximately 145 miles of temporary barriers in collaboration with the Department of Defense in Texas, including razor wire, chain link fencing, Normandy-style vehicle barricades. This represents a stark contrast to the construction halt that occurred during the Biden administration. To expedite construction timelines, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem has strategically deployed environmental law waivers, including bypassing the National Environmental Policy Act requirements. These waivers have cleared the path for approximately 36 miles of new border wall construction in Arizona and New Mexico, eliminating potential administrative delays that could slow the progress. And the scale of planned construction under this new funding from the One Big Beautiful Bill It is absolutely massive. The legislation will fund the completion of 701 miles of primary walls and 900 miles of river barriers along the U.S.-Mexico border. And I do believe that this wall is going to go up very, very quickly. And by the time Trump is done with his 4 years in D.C., this wall is going to be completed. And you could see that the deep state players, they are now panicking over this because what's going to happen? Well, it's going to stop all these people coming into this country, which means the money makers, the cartels, the human traffickers, the terrorists, the child traffickers, you name it, all that money that was being made off of this, well, that is just going to completely and utterly dry up. And since these people aren't coming over the border anymore, and the wall is stopping them, that means there's no people to cheat in the election for them. They can't use people because they don't have them. So right now, you could see that it's all being shut down. And as the midterms approach, it's going to be very, very difficult for the deep state players, for the Ds. Now, what's very interesting is that we could see the deep state players, they're trying to build up the idea that something big is going to be coming from Ghislaine Maxwell. Something big is going to be coming from Epstein. See, they need this to distract from the Russian collusion hoax and all the evidence that's pouring out. And CNN, they put out an article, and they are now reporting that the Department of Justice has an audio recording of the interview and is seriously considering releasing it for public consumption. Now, do they have an audio recording? Of course they do. Remember, we had Todd Blanche, he interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell, and they do have the audio recording. And what's very interesting is that Stephen Chung, the White House communication director, he issued a salty response to CNN's report, mocking them for trying to create old news and their low ratings, while also pointing out that Trump had already addressed the issue. So Trump, during an interview, he already let everyone know that on the topic of Maxwell, he said that he hadn't spoken directly with Blanche about Maxwell beating and was unsure where any information would be made public. On the related topic of potential pardon from Maxwell, Trump stated, "I'm allowed to do it, but nobody's asked me to do it. I know nothing about it. I don't know anything about the case, but I know I have the right to do it." Now, I do believe Trump and the Patriots, yes, they have the recordings. Yes, they have the information. They would like the grand jury information. But again, you could see the Obama judges, the deep state players, they don't want that released. Actually, Maxwell does not want that information released. She opposes that, which is very, very interesting. And again, Trump, he wants to release credible information that has to do with Epstein, not the information the deep state players want. So once again, we can see that Trump now, the Republicans, they're calling in these people because once again, it's going to prove to the American people that they really have nothing on Trump. And really, it's all about them because they projected everything that they did onto Trump, which is going to be very, very interesting. Now, the other thing that we could see is that DHS, they came out with a guidance where it said if you're completely against Israel, you will not receive funding. And the White House, and Natalie Winters put this out, White House officials tell me DHS guidance has been updated to show no Israel requirements. So basically, they were saying, listen, if you don't go along with Israel, if you're not on Israel's side, we're not going to give you any type of funds. So basically, someone within the DHS who was creating these new regulations, they went ahead and put that in there. Now, who actually did this? Was this Kristi Noem? I don't believe it was, because I don't think she's doing the nitty-gritty of creating these regulations. So was it an individual within DHS that is a sleeper that decided to put this in there to create chaos? Because as soon as people started to call this out, they had to go back and say, whoa, why is this in here? Because again, if you say something about Israel and you're not going to get funding, well, this goes against the Constitution completely, because what do we care about a foreign nation? I mean, if we say something bad about France or Germany or any other nation, we should ban giving out money to different places? No, that makes no sense whatsoever. So looks like someone actually did this on purpose to create chaos. And Natalie Winter says the section, discriminatory prohibited boycott, means refusing to deal, cutting commercial relations, or otherwise limiting commercial relations specifically with Israeli companies or with companies doing business in or with Israel, or authorized by, licensed by, or organized under the laws of Israel to do business has been removed. So basically, anyone that is discriminating against people in this country, they're the ones who will be excluded from receiving federal aid. So who put this in there? Who in the agency actually did it? I find this very, very interesting. It seems like they wanted to create chaos for some reason. And once again, they did, and you could see everyone started to attack, everyone started to go crazy, but everyone needs to calm down a little bit, because you have to remember, within these agencies, we still have individuals who are they are sleepers. They haven't found everyone out. Remember, there's 10, 20, 30,000 people in these agencies. All you need is one. I mean, can you just look at someone and say, hey, look, I found it. I found the person. No, they're sleepers. Even if you give them a lie detector, these people are incredible at lying. They believe it's the truth. And this is how they can get away with it. But again, to go through all these people and to actually weed all of them out, it's literally almost impossible. You're always going to have a couple in there. And it looks like there might have been someone in there that tried to push this agenda to create chaos. And now we could see that it has been corrected. And I do believe before any of this stuff gets out, I do believe the heads of these different agencies, they should probably have these people read over it to make sure it's in accordance with the Constitution, with everything that we do in this country. But again, that is their business. This is what I do believe they should do. Now, the other thing that we could see is that everything is going to change in regards to the space race. And also with energy. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, who also serves as the interim NASA administrator, unveiled a directive to expedite development of a 100-kilowatt nuclear reactor on the lunar surface, targeting deployment by 2030. And that is really only 5 years away. Framed as the Trump administration's first major policy shift at NASA under Duffy's leadership, the initiative is a cast as a critical weapons in the intensifying second space race, a showdown against China and Russia, who are reportedly pursuing similar lunar infrastructure plans. The first country to do so could potentially declare a keep-out zone, which would significantly inhibit the United States from establishing a planned Artemis presence if not there first, says Duffy. And then he said, every milestone in the Artemis campaign brings us closer to landing Americans back on the moon and pushing onwards to Mars. In about 6 months, Artemis 2 astronauts will journey around the moon for the first time in 53 years. America rallied behind Apollo because it represented the best of us. Now it's Artemis' turn. They're not just carrying a flag. They're carrying the pride, power, and promise of the United States of America. And then Sean Duffy put this out and said the following. 56 years ago, Americans were first to set foot on the moon, proving again that we're the greatest nation on earth. It's time to top that mission. Thanks to President Trump, NASA is backed. NASA Artemis will finish what we started. We're going back to the moon, and this time we're staying. Then we're going to Mars. Stay tuned. So this is going to be very, very interesting and very, very exciting in the next couple of years. So let's see how this all plays out. And let's see if we can get this done, because once again, we know there's many, many conspiracies saying that we've never been to the moon, saying that we can't get past the radiation belt. Now, once again, if Trump and team, once they reach the moon and we're on the moon and we're building a nuclear power plant on the moon, well, I guess all of that just completely goes to the wayside, doesn't it? Let's talk about our health. A recent clinical trial found that participants using just 10 grams of collagen a day for 8 weeks saw up to 20% increase in skin hydration and a 17% improvement in elasticity while visibly reducing their wrinkle depth. If you're aiming to boost skin health, collagen is a must-have. But typical collagen supplements found on store shelves don't always do the job. This is why I use this special blend of magic, and I'm obsessed with how much my skin health has improved. It improves my skin with the 5 types of premium collagen it needs to help reduce wrinkles. Since taking it, I've seen promising smoother skin, more elasticity, fewer lines, and more youthful glow. Plus, it mixes smoothly with my morning coffee or tea. Make sure to grab a bag while it's still 51% off only at healthwithx22.com. Plus, you'll also get free VIP live and health fitness coaching for life, a free ebook titled The 14 Foods for Amazing Skin, a 60-day satisfaction guarantee, and free shipping with your order. Once again, that website is healthwithx22.com, or just click the link in the description. And it proves that we actually did visit the moon. But let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. Now, the other thing that we could see, and we could see why Trump has been putting a lot of pressure on Brazil, because once again, what happened? The Biden administration went down, released Lula from his prison cell. Then all of a sudden, he ran against Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro had the people, but of course, what did Lulu and team do? They cheated in the election, and he came into power. And ever since that time, he's been acting like a tyrant along with Alexandre de Moraes. Remember, he went after Elon Musk with X. And now we can see the Supreme Court Justice de Moraes, he's ordered the house arrest of Bolsonaro. So basically, they're doing the same thing to Bolsonaro that they were trying to do to Trump. And once again, you can see that Trump, he's putting a lot of pressure on Brazil, saying, if you continue this and you continually put your hands on Bolsonaro, I will continually make it very difficult for your country. And this is what Trump is going to do. And once again, you could see what they're doing. They're using the same exact playbook that they used here. They're actually keeping him in prison. This is what they wanted to do with Trump. They never thought he was going to beat it. They thought they had the power, and they thought they were going to throw Trump away forever, and they never had to worry about him again. But that didn't happen. And now Trump is going after the deep state players. He is the hunter. He is on the offense. The deep state players, they are on the defense. And I do believe things are going to change in Brazil very, very quickly. And you're going to see that Trump is going to respond to what just happened out in Brazil. And yes, he's going to make these people pay. And I do believe the people of Brazil, they're going to rise up and they're going to turn on their installed politicians. Because remember, they're not leaders. The people didn't want them. These people don't represent the people. And I do believe it's time to make a change. Just like we did in this country, they're going to do it in Brazil. They're going to do it in France. They're going to do it in the UK. They're going to do it in Germany. They're going to do it in every single country. Because when you bring the people to the precipice, you know what they do? They fight back really darn hard. And we could see out in Ukraine, the fighting most likely is coming to an end. And you can see that the Russians, they've backed off the nuclear threats. And basically, they said, listen, we don't want a nuclear war. We're not looking to have a nuclear war. And they basically walked back everything that Medvedev has said, which is very, very interesting. The other thing that's very interesting is that now Trump, he is now putting a lot of pressure on Putin. Now, remember, Zelensky and Ukraine, they're not getting funding from the United States. We're not just giving them weapons. So basically, they're having a very difficult time. Now, since oil prices are dropping, this is going to be very, very difficult for Putin. And Trump says the following: if energy goes down low enough, Putin's going to stop killing people. If you get energy down another $10 a barrel, he's going to have no choice because his economy stinks. His economy is built up on oil sales, on expensive oil sales. So again, a war of attrition. If you get rid of his funding, which Trump now is doing, he's having OPEC drop the prices by drilling and producing a lot more oil. Here in this country, we're going to be drilling for oil. So you're going to see oil prices continually drop, which means there's going to be a lot of pressure on Putin. Now, I do believe Trump is the middleman, and he played this perfectly. And now we can see that Putin's going to say, listen, because of the oil prices, because it's costing us a lot of money, we better come to the bargaining table. Zelensky is going to say, hey, we don't have the weapons. The EU, the deep state players, they're not supporting us the way they did before. The United States is not funding us anymore. And we can't keep going like this. And what's very interesting is now Putin is willing to meet Zelensky. So Trump sent Steve Witkoff over to Russia. And actually, those individuals, in Russia. They actually get along with Steve Witkoff. And I do believe that as of right now, this is the beginning stages of the peace deal. Because again, when you remove the funding, when you remove the ability to fund the war, what do you have left? You only have peace. And I do believe this is exactly what Trump is doing. Now, I do believe that Zelensky, the deep state players, they were the ones that were the problem. I mean, think about what Biden did, not just Biden, but the people that were actually running the country, Obama. They were continually funding Ukraine, sending over billions upon billions of dollars. Why would Ukraine ever want to talk about a peace? They wouldn't, because they're getting the money, they're getting the weapons. They don't want peace, and the deep state players wanted them to keep going with the war. When you shut it all down, well, and you have nothing, and you're just sitting there going, okay, I can't fight a war. I got no money for bullets. I got no money for missiles. I got nothing. And I do believe this is what Trump did. He played the middleman, made it look like Putin was impossible to deal with, and it was actually Zelensky and the deep state players that were impossible, but he had to make it look good. And I do believe we're going to have peace very, very soon. Let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. Now, the other thing that we could see happening right now is that RFK, once again, he is shutting down everything the deep state players put into place. And this is what he put out on X. Hospitals began organ harvesting while patients still showed signs of life. That's horrifying, and it ends now. Under my leadership, HHS Gov is overhauling the organ transplant system. We have exposed gross negligence, launched sweeping reforms, and will decertify any organization that violates the sanctity of human life. So, were they doing this with Planned Parenthood? Were they doing this with babies? Yeah, they were. Patriots Are in Control put this out and said, here's Planned Parenthood procurement partner admitting under oath in 2019 that intact babies with beating hearts are dissected outside the womb to obtain the specific organs and tissues requested by researchers. RFK Jr. is doing what he can to end this evil practice. And yes, this is what they were doing. And we could see that he is now ending this practice. Now you know why the deep state players are so angry. This business was very, very profitable. Why do you think they wanted all these women to get abortions? Actually, they loved the late-term abortions. Why? Because the fetus was well developed. And they didn't kill the baby. They actually needed it alive to harvest the organs. I mean, really think about what they've done here and how much money they were making over this, while using the cover story that it's my body, my choice. I mean, really think about this for a second and how they brainwashed the women and the men over the many, many years to believe this. Unbelievable. But look what else is unbelievable. Trump now is going to stop the price gouging of pharmaceutical companies. And we said this yesterday. If you notice, the deep state players at ease, they never mention price gouging of pharmaceutical companies. Never even mention it. Only food, only oil, but never pharmaceutical drugs. And Trump said, we've cut drug prices by 1,200%, 1,300%, 1,400%, 1,500%. I don't mean 50%. I mean 1,400%, 1,500%. We want the same prices as Europe or Canada. We'll be dropping drug prices. It will start over the next 2 to 3 months by 1,200, 1,300, and even 1,400 and 1,500. But not just 50 or 25, which normally would be a lot because the rest of the world pays much less for the identical drug. And once again, he is now ending all of this. And what's very interesting is that Americans for Pharma Reform actually shows everyone how much Big Pharma pays for TV ads. And this is why they can control the different propaganda networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, and all the rest. And this is what they put out. It's time for Congress to end the scheme. Ban pharma TV ads. Big Pharma spends over $10 billion a year on TV ads, not to inform you, but to buy media silence and favorable coverage. Every dollar is a bribe to legacy media to shut up about their price gouging, corruption, and deadly products. It's legalized censorship run as 30-second spots. Absolutely. And this has been going on for a very long time. So basically, Big Pharma, they've been buying off legacy media for many, many years. And this is why families struggle to afford good health care, prescription drugs. And this is why Big Pharma spends so much money. Trump now is putting an end to a lot of this. RFK Jr. is putting an end to a lot of this. And we're going to see everything start to change. And it's going to change for the good. Just like Trump now is changing everything the deep state, the D's, have done to this country, where they tried to remove the history of this country and they removed statues. And right now, the Trump administration, they're going to reinstall a Confederate general statue that was vandalized and toppled in D.C. during the 2020 Black Lives Matter riots. This is General Albert Pike, a Confederate diplomat. And again, this is our history. You might not like the history, but this is our history, and it tells a story of what happened. It made us who we are, and it makes it so we don't repeat the same history. But again, you can see the deep state players, the D's, what they really wanted to do is they wanted to remove history from this great country and create their own history. So this way, everyone is confused, just like they confuse the children of this country, that you don't know what sex you are. You can be anything. You want to be a cat? Be a cat. You want to be a dog? You can be a dog. It makes no difference. It's absolutely ridiculous. Just like Mamdani out in New York. Remember, he wanted to defund the police? Remember, he was all for it? Strange that he did a 180 right now. Eric Doherty put this out and said, defund the police officer Zoran Mamdani does a total 180, calls for more funds to the police. 200 officers are leaving the NYPD every month. I want to empower police officers to respond to serious crime. So why did he change? Is it because he got caught having armed guards at his Uganda wedding? Because everyone looked and said, hey, look, you're protected. You don't want us protected? Plus, he started to look at the polls. And I think the polls are showing that, you know something? People are not into this. The everyday person on the street, they're not for this person. Yes, the wealthy, elite people who live someplace else, yeah, they're for him. But the everyday working person, they're not for this person because they live in the neighborhoods, they see the crime, they see what's going on. It's almost like in Chicago or Seattle and many other places where these people said, you know something, we need the police back. This is getting out of hand because everyday people, they experience it every single day. And you could see he had to do a 180. And yes, Elizabeth Warren, she's backing him up. That should tell you everything you need to know. And again, in the end, the only way this person can get into office is if he's installed. And let's see how that all plays out because I think things are changing in the election realm. Now, the other thing that's very interesting, we know that the D's, they escaped to Illinois, they escaped to New York, and it looks like the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, he is obstructing justice. Amuse put this out and said, we're now learning that the Texas House Democrats were colluding with billionaire J.B. Pritzker to prevent the Texas House from achieving a quorum. The secret meeting began the month before Governor Abbott announced the special session. So they've been planning this for quite a while. Like I said before, the D's, they just don't do this willy-nilly. They plan this out, they have their meetings, and they've done this with the cheating in the election of 2020, with COVID, with J6, and what they're planning now. And think about it. Kathy Hochul now says that she wants to redraw New York's congressional lines in response to Texas. Greg Price responded to this and said, New York literally just did this right before the 2024 election to eliminate 3 Republican seats they lost in the 2022 midterms. So think about it. It's only okay that they do this, they gerrymander, but it's not okay if the Republicans do this. Isn't that interesting? And what's very interesting is that, for those people that don't know, gerrymandering is the practice of manipulating the boundaries of electoral districts, such as congressional or legislative districts, in a way that gives an unfair advantage to one political party group or incumbent over others. This is typically done by those in power who control the redistricting process. often after a census when district lines are redrawn to reflect population changes. Now, where did this come from? Where did gerrymandering come from? Well, the term comes from Elbridge Gerry, a U.S. vice president and Massachusetts governor in the early 1800s, who signed a bill creating oddly shaped districts resembling a salamander, hence gerrymander, because his last name was Gerry. So salamander, put it together, gerrymander. That's where that came from. And you can see the deep state players, the D's, they don't like it when the Republicans do it because, again, this does what? It reduces their power. And again, their power is being reduced by the illegals that are being deported. Their power is being reduced because of voter ID. And now this. And DC Drano responds to the D's and he says, hey, Democrats, if you want to gerrymander more blue seats, why don't you start with these states? Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Hawaii, New Mexico, Connecticut. Oh, wait, you can't because you already did. Think about that for a second. And what's very interesting is that these D's that have fled Texas, it really does not look good for them. Instead of them sitting there and voting, they broke the law. Remember, nobody's above the law. They decided, you know what, we're going to break the law and we're going to put the spectacle on and we're going to use emotions to convince the people that we're right. Guess what? The people don't listen to you anymore. The people don't go along with this anymore. Your emotional roller coasters do not work anymore. And the people, they're thinking logically. And what's very interesting, even Chuck Todd has blasted the Texas Dems for protesting the gerrymandering by fleeing to Illinois. He says, I think it's a bad look for the party that claims to be always trying to protect democracy. And it is pretty darn bad. Joe Lange responded to this and said, even Chuck Todd is saying that Texas Democrats protesting gerrymandering, fleeing to Illinois is really a bad look. Illinois is famous for gerrymandering. The Democrats have secured California, New York, and Illinois through gerrymandering, and now they're crying because the Republicans are now doing the same in their two big red states. The two states that are massively gaining in population while California, New York, and Illinois are losing population. And on top of that, Trump is removing illegals and not going to count them in the census. This doesn't just force the Democrats to lose representation in the House of Representatives. It will also make sure that they lose presidential elections. But that's not all. Trump is going to expose the election fraud in 2020. I believe he will do it before the midterms. That will make the Democratic Party toxic. Lots of indictments in a conspiracy of treason and the impetus to completely transform our entire election system. That ensures that the Democratic Party will be a minority party with no influence. But it will just get worse for Democrats. Nobody will want to be associated with them anymore. Why? Haiti opens the door to the Clinton Foundation, child trafficking on a global scale. Not just child sex trafficking, but child sacrifice too. The evil will all be exposed. That's the only way to completely stop it. Full transparency and then prosecution. We have the servers. Those 33,000 emails reveal everything, and the Clintons are at the center of everything. Bill and Hillary Clinton and the modern day Ahab and Jezebel. They will go down in history as pure evil, and the Democratic Party will go down with them. And yes, in the end, the Dems will cease to exist. And those Ds that escaped, that's pretty much what they did. Arrest warrants approved by the Texas House for 51 Democrats have now been issued. Remember, nobody is above the law. And it looks like FBI Director Kash Patel has been called up to assist in the arrests. Eric Doherty put this out and said, FBI Director Kash Patel has been asked to help Texas authorities track down and arrest the Dem lawmakers who fled the state to block a vote on redistricting. The governor and legislators have sent out warrants for their arrest. They'll be brought in one way or another. And it looks like there are 2 Texas House Democrats that have returned to the chambers. The resistance is already cracking. Gunther Eagleman put this out and said, Representative Phil Cortez and Representative Eddie Morales have returned. They know exactly what would have happened had they not. We only need 4 more to return to get a quorum. So this is going to be very, very interesting. Let's see what the D's do. Once again, if they're arrested and they're not back, they're going to be replaced. This is going to be very, very interesting. I do believe that these people, most of them, are going to fold and they're going to head back and vote. And guess what? Well, everything will be redistricted. And what's very interesting, you could see that the deep state players like former Attorney General Eric Holder, he's panicking about this. And he says that Texas, if they redistrict, it could affect the certification of the 2028 presidential election. So the certification of the 2028 presidential election results occurs on January 6, 2029, and is conducted by the Congress elected in November 2028, seated on January 3rd, 2029, as stipulated by the 20th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and federal law, 3 U.S. Section 15. This means the House of Representatives responsible for certification would be shaped by the district maps in use for the 2028 elections. So therefore, yes, the proposed Texas redistricting could affect the certification process by influencing the partisan composition of the House elected in 2028. If the gerrymandered maps help Republicans gain or maintain seats in Texas, it could contribute to a GOP majority in that future Congress, potentially impacting how objections to electoral votes are handled during certification. This is what he's worried about. This effect would be indirect and depend on various factors such as voter turnout, national political trends, legal challenges to the maps, and whether other states engage in similar redistricting. Eric Holder's recent claim focused on the risk of Republicans holding the House in 2026 via gerrymandering, incorrectly stating that this would be the body certifying the 2028 election. The 2026 elected House serves from 2027 to 2029, but does not handle the 2028 presidential certification. That falls to the subsequent Congress. The broader concern about redistricting influence on future House majorities remains valid as the maps would persist across elections. So he's worried that the Republicans would have the power. And yes, the Ds, they're going to lose power. They don't have the illegals. Now, because of what the Republicans are doing, they're going to have more power. And with voter ID, basically, they're not going to get any votes. Actually, they won't even be able to install their people. And think about this. Trump now is basically stripping them of everything. Brilliant Hollian put this out and said, PBS is broke, the DNC is broke, USAID got defunded, Planned Parenthood is broke, CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post are all laying off people. This is what I voted for. And now the illegals are being deported. Redistricting is happening. And the Ds, they're losing all power. Isn't that interesting? Which means we are going to have a real election come the midterms and thereafter. And this is what the Ds are so afraid of. And the other thing that they should be afraid of is what Judicial Watch found out. Newly obtained documents by Judicial Watch from the Department of Homeland Security and FBI reveal a disturbing and deliberate cover-up by the Biden administration of U.S. counterintelligence concerns regarding Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and his deep state ties to communist China. The 47-page document dump obtained through a March 2025 Freedom of Information Act request lawsuit exposes that federal law enforcement and intelligence agencies flagged Walz as a major concern. And yet, those warnings were hidden from the public just as he was being handpicked by the Biden-Harris campaign to join the 2024 ticket. According to emails and chat logs from DHS's Nation-State Threat Biweekly Sync group, federal agents openly discussed how the Chinese Communist Party had cultivated Walz as a long-term asset and saw his selection as vice president as a major win for Beijing. So, isn't that election interference? Once again, they didn't release this information. The deep state didn't want to release it. Yeah, I do believe, once again, they were interfering with the election. Just like when they manipulated the recording, when 60 Minutes manipulated the recordings of the interview with Kamala Harris. Just like when they put out fake poll numbers. Every single one of these things are rigging the election. And you could see they've been doing this for a very long time. But now you could see that everything's now falling apart on them, especially in regards to Russian collusion and Epstein. Because Representative James Comer, well, he now has issued subpoenas to Hillary Clinton. She's October 9th. Bill Clinton is October 14th. Merrick Garland is October 2nd. James Comey, October 7th. Former attorney, U.S. Attorney General William Barr is August 18th. Former U.S. Attorney General Alberto Gonzales, August 26th. Jeff Sessions, August 28th. Robert Mueller, September 2nd. Loretta Lynch, September 9th. And Eric Holder, September 30th. Remember those dates. This is going to be very, very interesting. Now, again, these people aren't going to admit, yes, I've been to Epstein Island. Yes, we push Russian collusion. I mean, whatever questions they're going to ask them. Basically, what this does is it sets up a transcript. And once it turns out that they lied, this is going to be very, very interesting. And again, basically, these people are trapped in all this. Because remember, this is a no-win situation for the deep state players. If they plead the fifth, it will prove that they have nothing on Trump. Because if they really had something on Trump, they would tell you. If they start to talk, well, they might incriminate themselves. And basically, they might get in a jam. So no matter what they do, they are trapped in all this. And the whole entire Epstein narrative has completely and utterly fallen apart around them. But what's very interesting, and MJ Truth Ultra put this out, said the House Oversight Committee subpoenaed the DOJ for the Epstein files. But what's very interesting is what I highlighted. They are requesting all communications regarding Epstein under the Biden administration. Trump has been saying they planted things in the files. If they're demanding communications, there's a very high chance there is incriminating evidence within those communications. Another trap set? Now, it depends. Which communications are they getting? Are they getting it from their official email and text messages, or are they looking at Google and other ways they were communicating? I think they should be getting it all. And you can see the deep state players right now. They're doing their best. The fake news is doing everything they possibly can to keep the grand conspiracy going. I do believe Trump with the Patriots, I think he knew that the fake news, the D's, they would never backtrack on anything and say, hey, by the way, yeah, it was one gigantic hoax. He knew that they would keep the grand conspiracy going, and this is exactly what he wants them to do, because, again, it actually allows the statute of limitations to continue, and it never runs out. So we want the fake news to do this. We want the D's to do this. And what's very interesting is that CNN now says the manufactured intelligence report by Obama and his intelligence community aimed at delegitimizing President Trump's win wasn't election interference and it wasn't illegal. Thank you for keeping the grand conspiracy going. Western Lensman put this out and said, NBC News segment on DOJ opening of Russiagate grand jury probe. The reporter apprises the viewer that Russiagate is a distraction. All Gabbard's claims are unsubstantiated. Reemphasizes there is zero evidence to back up claims. It's all politically motivated. Trump wants to attack his political foes. That's the entire report. The level of deceptive propaganda here is on par with what legacy media did when running the original hoax. And everyone understands why. Hey, thank you, NBC, for keeping this up. Thank you for keeping up the grand conspiracy. They fell right into the trap. Clandestine put this out and said, and of course, the left-wing mainstream media are running with the headline that the DOJ impaneling of grand jury for Russiagate is a distraction from Epstein, which tells you right there they were trying to use Epstein to distract from all of this. They just proved it. Thank you, MSNBC. This is not objective reporting. This is a desperate spin to distract from the fact that their Dem handlers are facing indictments. This is what Trump was trying to warn us about by saying the Epstein outrage was a hoax. The Dems were trying to preemptively create a counter-narrative to smear Trump because they knew that Trump was hunting them. They desperately needed a narrative to distract from the revelations of their treasonous conspiracy against Trump. The Dems, the mainstream media, can say this is a distraction all they want, but the grand jury is already being impaneled. Justice is getting closer, and regardless of how much they deny it. And again, they can deny it all they want. They can pretend that no, this is still real and Trump is just trying to go back and go after his political opponents. Again, what they're really doing is they're keeping the grand conspiracy going. And we want to thank the fake news for all of this, because you fell right into the trap. And this is absolutely perfect. Now, again, is everyone going to believe this? No, there's going to be people that still don't believe. And especially as the grand jury is looking through the evidence, what we're going to see is that time is going to go by and people are going to say, look, nothing's going on. And people are going to start to lose interest. And I do believe this is why Trump most likely set it up where you have the first movie out there, and then we know the FBI, DOJ, they're looking into the election rigging. But Hans, he put this out and said, there are still far too many people, including those with large platforms, who frame this as a story the media simply botched. This is completely wrong. Framing it that way does a real disservice. The media was an internal part of the plot against Trump. Some outlets like ABC were working directly with and for the Clinton campaign. Others like the Washington Post were working directly with and for the intelligence services. Some did both, but none of them botched anything. They were part of the operation. And that is absolutely true. And think about it. As Trump brings in the other part of the conspiracy, the election rigging, and brings in Epstein and everything else, remember, it's the same players. So did the fake news botch every single thing? No, this is how you build a case. And it's building, and it's going to continue to build. And what's very interesting is that we have Brennan, we have Clapper, we have many people out there going on to the fake news and trying to defend themselves. Where's James Comey? Has he turned? Is he singing like a bird? Svetlana Lokova said, is Comey cooperating? Maybe, maybe not. Very suspicious, though. Now, the other thing that we know, and a lot of people thought that, Durham was a waste. He didn't get the people. Again, do you really think he was going to be able to try the people? That wasn't his main task. Yes, one of his tasks were to test the system. Okay, we cannot have any type of trial in D.C. It just won't work. The other task was to get the people to lie to him, to get it in transcript form, to have the documents. And that's exactly what he did. And now it's being used against all these people. Remember, Trump and the Patriots, they planned this out a long time ago. It might have seemed like nothing was happening, that, oh, look, it failed again. But no, they were setting this up step by step. Hans put this out and said, one thing that offers a bit of hope is the timing. Brennan sat for a full day of questioning with Durham on August 21st, 2020. We've never seen a transcript, but it has always seemed likely that this was when he told his most actionable lies, spinning tales, advancing conspiracy narratives, and covering his tracks. There are now 16 days left to bring charges tied to anything he said that day. That's a far more promising angle than anything else publicly known. So if prosecutors are moving quickly, and if August 20th, 2025 is the deadline they have in mind, there may still be reason to hope. But again, this is a grand conspiracy. The statute of limitations, these have not ended because they're keeping the conspiracy going. And all these people have lied to the American people over and over and over. And cynical Publius said the following: the last three Democratic presidents, Biden, Obama, Clinton, were all prolific liars. But there were big differences in their styles of lying. Biden lied like a 3-year-old with his hand in the cookie jar. Clinton lied like a charming philanderer. Everybody knew he was lying and cheating on them, but they were charmed by it anyway. Obama lied like a cold-blooded sociopath. That's because he is a cold-blooded sociopath. Absolutely. And remember, he picked his name, Renegade, Turncoat, Traitor. He picked it out. Think about that for a second. But we could see that the grand jury is now being impaneled, and the grand jury is now going to be looking at the evidence. And it looks like it's not going to be in D.C. Stormers Arrive put this out on X and says, John Solomon is reporting that his sources are telling him that grand jury for the grand conspiracy will likely take place in Florida. Most likely my sources are telling me that it could be in Florida where they raided President Trump at his Mar-a-Lago home. This is absolutely huge if this source is correct. We all know it has to happen outside of D.C. if we really want to see accountability. Now, remember, this is the grand jury. And the grand jury, it's done in secret. It's not brought out into the open. People don't see what's going on. And what's very interesting is we know that we have a certain person in place, and that is Jason Redding Quiones. So this is going to be very, very interesting moving forward. And think about this, and Bruce Snyder put this out. Pam Bondi sent all of her findings, evidence, Russiagate, to the grand jury. Do you know what today is? And this is when she did it. It was yesterday. It's August 4th. Do you know who was born on August 4th? Obama. Do you think that's a coincidence? Happy birthday. Let's go back to post 1816, August 5th, 2018. FISA, 20 in brackets. There is a reason why we needed to go mainstream prior to the evidence being dropped. You have more than you know, D5. Where we go one, we go all. Cynical Publius put this out and said the following. Today, the Justice Department has opened a grand jury probe into Russiagate. Let me say that again. Today, the Justice Department has opened a grand jury probe into Russiagate. I know. All the doomsters will say no one is going to go to jail. But they also saying, do something, Bondi. Well, she just did something. A mere 2 weeks after referrals from DNI Gabbard. Some key things to remember. Any good prosecutor can get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. The process is the punishment. Discovery will be brutal for the left. The wheels of justice grind slowly, but they grind exceedingly fine. Barack Obama loved to quote MLK with this. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. It's all happening. And we need to remember that a grand jury can take up to 18 months. It could be longer. But if we start to look at the timing of all this, it's very, very interesting because, again, Trump now has decided to release the declassified information via the different agencies. Tulsi Gabbard was handling it. And this gives him between 15 and 18 months until the midterms. And 18 months actually brings us beyond the midterms once we have control of the House and Senate. And I do believe that we are going to have control, and this was timed perfectly. Now, I do believe that Trump will release additional information as we go along. I don't think he's going to just depend on this. Remember, this is the biggest sting operation the world has ever seen. And with a sting operation, you need to make sure that you get them on every single thing that they have done, because if they, get by one, they'll be caught in another act. And also it shows that they kept the grand conspiracy going. It's the same exact people, and they are the ones who did every single one of these things. And Bedard said, yeah, the poll says that Obama broke the law with Russiagate. He must be prosecuted. 69% say this. And yes, he needs to be prosecuted. And I do believe this is the first movie that we're seeing right now. And I do believe there's 2 more movies that we're going to see. Let's go back to post 1929. It says the trilogy. This is August 19th, by the way, 2018. The trilogy. Movie 1, full, the start. And this is all about FISA, Russiagate, and everything else. It says coming soon to a theater near you. Movie 2, coming this fall. Movie 3 to be announced. Enjoy the show. So I do believe maybe movie 2 is how they rigged the elections. Movie 3 could be Epstein. Think about this for a second. Let's see how this all plays out. Now, the other thing that we see is that there are many different individuals that are trying to stop Trump. Now, I do believe Trump, the Patriots, they knew that there was no way that the Senate was going to confirm all his nominees in August, even if they didn't take a break, because they'd be fighting over it and they'd be pushing back, and they would make it seem like we're not going to confirm these people because, hey, maybe I'm on break or we don't want to do it today. So I think Trump, he knew from the very, very beginning that he was going to have to use a completely and utterly different strategy. And that strategy is what? I do believe recess appointments. Maybe he'll come up with something else, but I do believe that's where all this is leaning. And what's very interesting, and Amuse put this out and says obstruction. Republican Senator Chuck Grassley has put a hold on Trump's nominees for Treasury General Counsel, Assistant Secretary, and Undersecretary. It is now official. The GOP is doing everything it can to stop Trump once again. Now, I do believe that this is all being done on purpose. He wants them to stop confirming people. He wants them to recess. And he wants a disagreement so he can adjourn Congress. And this way he can step in and go, thank you very much. All these people now are confirmed. Recess appointments. Let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. Now, the other thing that we could see is that in Texas, all of a sudden, the appeals court ruled that Texas can require voter ID for mail-in ballots. And this must happen in every state. Actually, I think in the end, we need to get rid of mail-in ballots. But for as of now, they need a voter ID. Now, remember how the deep state players use mail-in ballots. They use the illegals. They use all those social security numbers that they found that they still had, and they gave them to the illegals. They fill out the ballots. They send them in. Some of these people had driver's license in the blue states, and this is how they vote. This is how they had the illegal vote. Now you need an ID. Ooh, this is going to be very, very difficult because, again, are you a citizen? Aren't you a citizen? So this is trouble for the Ds. Trump responded to this and said, this is great news, should be nationwide. Appeals court upholds Texas law requiring IDs numbers to cast mail-in ballots. And yes, this should be nationwide. So with the appeals court for the Fifth Circuit Court, does this make it easier for other states to do this? Yes. Yes, it does. This ruling tilts the scales in favor of voter ID proponents by validating a key defense against federal scrutiny. So yes, states now can say, listen, Texas did it. We have a ruling. We should do it too. And every single state should do this. Now, we know the blue states aren't going to do this. But again, we know that Trump has an executive order. You could see that mostly the midterms are going to be pretty darn safe. And it's going to be very, very difficult for the deep state players to cheat in the midterms. And once again, we have to remember Pam Bondi, because of the executive order, she is now looking into all the different states, making sure that they are in line with what Trump wants with his executive order. So this is going to be very, very interesting moving forward. And the people of this country, they all agree. Illegals shouldn't vote in U.S. elections. Rasmussen Reports put this out and said, how important is it to prevent illegal immigrants from voting in U.S. elections? Dems, 61%. Independents, 72%. GOP, 86%. All voters, 72%. So all voters agree. All voters want to be there while the count is going on. All voters want paper ballots. All voters want one-day voting. Everything the deep state players do not want. So again, the people are not with the deep state. The people are with Trump. And you can see that every step of the way, people want elections that are on the up and up. They don't want one body cheating in the elections. And we could see the deep state players, they are truly panicking over all of this. And now the Patriots, they are on the offensive. The Ds, the deep state players, they're on the defensive, and they're losing every single day. And we could see that once they lose the midterms and we, the people, win the midterms, we will have control to usher in the second part of this plan. And the second part of this plan is accountability and justice. It's coming, and it's coming fast. Why? Because the Patriots are in control. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.